Hey, good day to you. This is Todd with the regular Jude walking through the Word. We're going to be going through Holy Week here, part of Holy Week. I'm going to be teaching on the crucifixion and resurrection starting Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Thursday, I'm going to be taking our scripture from Matthew 26:36 to 75. Good Friday, I'll be going with Matthew 27:1 through 56. And then Saturday, Matthew 27:57 through 66. And then Easter, Matthew 28:1 through 20. So it'll be a lot of scripture reading during this time. And but it's just nice to get into the Word. We're going to be actually covering the whole end of the book of Matthew. So I'm going to start reading. I'm going to read from today's episode is going to be Matthew 26, verse 36 to 75. We're picking it up right after the Last Supper. So Jesus has just had the Last Supper, and during this Last Supper, he has predicted that Peter will deny him 3 times. He's also said Judas will betray him, really. So, let me start reading in verse 36. I'm just going to make a few comments, but it's going to be mostly reading today. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, "Sit here while I go over there and pray." He took Peter and two of the sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." Going a little further, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will." Jesus he didn't necessarily want to do this, but he knew it was the only way. And he was saying, if there's any other way, I would do it. But if it's your will and if this is what needs to be done, I will do it. Verse 40, then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. "Couldn't you keep watch with me for 1 hour?" he asked Peter. "Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." It's still like that today for us. We easily fall asleep, even spiritually speaking, to fall asleep, and are easily distracted and taken away. And the spirit is, like Jesus said, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Verse 42, he went away a second time and prayed, "My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done." Saying this the second time. When he came back, he again found them sleeping because his eyes were heavy. So he left them and went away once more and prayed the third time, saying the same thing. Then he returned to his disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour has come and the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer." There came a point where Jesus was like, just let them sleep. But then the third time he comes back, he said, "All right, boys, it's time." Not that he was going to need their help or they would be of any help, but they were going to be involved here at the end. Verse 47. While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived. With him was a large crowd, armed with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him." Going at once to Jesus, Judas said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. What in the world? He said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Ultimate denial there. Jesus replied, Do what you came for, friend." You notice Jesus still calls him friend, even though he's in the midst of betraying him. He still calls him friend. Then the men stepped forward and seized Jesus and arrested him. With that, one of Jesus' companions reached for his sword, drew it out, and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. "Put your sword back in its place," Jesus said to him, "for all who draw the sword will die by the sword. Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scripture be fulfilled that say it must happen in this way? In that hour Jesus said to the crowd, Am I leading a rebellion that you've come at me with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I sat in the temple courts teaching, and you did not arrest me. But this has all taken place that the writings of the prophets might be fulfilled. Then all the disciples, they deserted him and fled. They took off. They were out of there. So Jesus was alone. You're going to see through this whole passage that in the end, Jesus is alone. Everyone's deserted him. He had crowds following him before, and he ends up all alone. And he was crucified and then was resurrected all alone. He didn't have any outside help in the resurrection. Those who had arrested, this is verse 57, those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the teachers of the law and the elders had assembled. But Peter followed him at a distance, right up to the courtyard of the high priest. He entered and sat down with the guards to see the outcome. So Peter's kind of sneaking in the back door there, kind of watching. He wants to see what happens, but he's not going to be up close. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for false evidence against Jesus, so they could put him to death. But they did not find any, though many false witnesses came forward. Isn't that funny? Trying to find false evidence, and they couldn't even find any of that. Finally, 2 came forward and declared, This fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and rebuild it in 3 days. Then the high priest stood up and said to Jesus, Are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you? But Jesus remained silent. You know, Jesus did say that. He said, I can destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. But he wasn't talking about the temple, the earthly temple. He was talking about how he would be crucified and be raised himself in 3 days. The high priest said to him, I charge you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God. You have said so, Jesus replied. But I say to you, all of you, from now on you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven. Oh boy, Jesus just said he's God. Verse 65, Then the high priest tore his clothes and said, He has spoken blasphemy. Why do we need any more witnesses? Look now, what you have heard is blasphemy. What do you think? He is worthy of death, they answered. Then they spit in his face and struck him with their fists. Others slapped him and said, Prophesy to us, Messiah. Who hit you? So we're at the point now where Jesus has said he is God, and naturally these guys are enraged and say he's a blasphemer. Verse 69. Now Peter was sitting out in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him. You were also with Jesus of Galilee, she said. But he denied it before them. I don't know what you're talking about, he said. Then he went out to the gateway where another servant girl saw him and said to the people there, This fellow was with Jesus of Nazareth. He denied it again with an oath. I don't know the man. And after a little while, those standing there went up to Peter and said, Surely you are one of them. Your accent gives you away. Then he began to call down curses, and he swore to them, I don't know the man. Immediately a rooster crowed. Then Peter remembered the word Jesus had spoken. Before the rooster crows, you will disown me 3 times. And he went outside and wept bitterly. That's the scripture for today. The thing I want you to see is, in the end here, Jesus had spent time at the Last Supper with the disciples. He had even washed and ate with Judas and washed his feet, knowing that Judas would betray him. And then even right up to the end, when Judas is betraying him, he says to him, Do what you've come to do for my friend. Jesus calls him my friend, even to that point. And then all the disciples, they fall asleep, and then they finally all flee. Peter, he hangs in the back, watching to see what would happen. But in the end, he denies Jesus 3 times. So Jesus is left alone to face ultimately the crucifixion. But in the end, Jesus was also the one that would be resurrected, and it was just all himself that did that. So this week, I would encourage you as a family to get together, read the scriptures, read through Matthew. Luke also tells of the same account. John also does it too. Mark, of course, also does. Read any of those last parts about the crucifixion, the time up to the crucifixion, and then even the resurrection. We'll cover that Sunday. Spend time together as a family reading through the scriptures, and have communion Friday. That would be great. All right, Lord's blessing to you. We'll see you tomorrow as we continue our journey through the Holy Week. Thanks.